Hey, what's going on, peeps? Sash and Clips back with a new video. Sorry about that. I'm sure you guys noticed that I had pulled my most recent video not too long after I posted it. It's because I actually made a lot of mistakes properly explaining the ZDPS build, and for the most part, my brain was just throttled by trying to keep track of what was going on in the rifts, and I couldn't actually really focus on commentary or explaining anything all that well, I don't think. So this will be a more in-depth overview of sorts of the actual build. ZDPS obviously stands for Zero DPS. It is a support build. And with the monk support build, basically all I'm doing is grouping stuff and trying to keep it as stationary as possible for the damage dealers to kill it. I'm going to start with the gear first, running the 4-piece Enas, which increases the passive effect of your Mystic Ally and the base passive effect of your mantra by 100%. And the fourth set, of course, gain the base effect of all 4 mantras at all times. This is what gives us a good amount of our survivability for starters. And then our other set, which is Little Rogue and the Slanderer. 2 set, every time you spend primary resource, gain 6% increased attack speed, damage, and armor for 5 seconds, which stacks up to 5 times. This is actually stronger than I figured it would be. I was honestly figuring that armor would be pretty underrated, and that it wouldn't really add all that much to my toughness, and it actually does help a ton. So, and the attack speed helps a lot too, because we're using Tsunami, or Crippling Wave with the Tsunami rune, which for that, every 3rd hit also freezes enemies within 17 yards for 1 second, as well as slowing their movement speed by 30% and attack speed by 20% for 3 seconds. So that set with Crippling Wave Tsunami is actually really strong. It's a really strong debuff for mobs and even elites and champion packs, even though there's of course diminishing returns, so unfortunately you can't just keep stuff frozen forever. But I do remember back in the day when that was a thing, before they took the nerf bat to it, and they were like, yeah, this is kind of ridiculous, having support monks just be able to freeze stuff infinitely till the end of time, which is quite literally what we did before diminishing returns was put into the game. But anyway, we got illusionary boots, which just lets me move through enemies. That's all that is. Keeps me from getting stuck on mobs to where I can't move, which would happen a lot if I didn't have those boots, because of the Cyclone Strike with Implosion. Just because with Implosion, Cyclone Strike has such a large radius, and then if I didn't have illusionary boots, I would just be boxing myself in constantly, and it'd be terrible. It would not be a very fun rave party, and I'd probably be screaming help most of the time, like help, help, and I would just have to sit there and wait until Dashing Strike was off cooldown, which would slow me down a lot, because, well, I'll go into that later after I explain the build. One of the rings I'm using is the Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. It reduces the remaining cooldown of of one of your skills by 1 second when you hit with a resource spending attack. So what that does basically is the more often I use Cyclone Strike, the faster that Dashing Strike with Blinding Speed will come off cooldown, which gives me more dodge, 40% more dodge. And then I'll be able to use Blinding Flash more often with Crippling Light, which reduces the damage enemies do for 5 seconds after it wears off, which is really another really helpful debuff to mobs. And then of course Epiphany, but we're running the Soothing Mist rune instead of the instead Desert Shroud, because the Soothing Mist actually allows me to heal my party with abilities. I thought it actually thought it counted toward my spirit generator too, but apparently it doesn't. And then we have Inner Sanctuary, Temple of Protection. That just makes it so that party members that are inside my Inner Sanctuary can't be hit with any kind of crowd control. So that's super helpful. Other ring is Oculus Ring. Chance to create an area of focus power on killing a monster. Damage is increased by 85% while standing in the area. That is actually 85% is as high as I can go, so I actually have a perfect roll. But that's really helpful when you have a wizard or a demon hunter, because then they can just sit in that area of focus power, hopefully, depending on what's going on, and they can just get a massive damage boost from that.
Yes?
We got strong arm bracers on. Enemies hit by knockbacks suffer 22% increased damage for 6 seconds, up to 30%. So, I believe this the only time you can actually make use of this is if you have a barbarian in your group. And generally, the unfortunate part is generally you only have a barbarian in your group if you're doing greater rifts of 100 or higher. Otherwise, that's really kind of overkill to have a ZDPS barb and a ZDPS monk in the same party. So honestly, I should be running Nemesis bracers instead, but I haven't gotten a good ancient pair yet. So got the Hellfire Amulet, which has the Harmony passive on it, which allows me to pick another passive skill, just to give me more utility for my build, basically. Then Leoric's Crown, increase the effect of any gem socketed into this item by 96%, up to 100%. Doesn't apply to legendary gems. This is just really convenient because it buffs my cooldown quite a bit, so my abilities come off cooldown a lot faster than they would normally. And then we got the good old freebies, as I like to call it. I know that's not even remotely what it's called, but I just like calling it the freebies because it's silly as fuck. Cyclone Strike reduces your damage taken by 41% for 5 seconds up to 50%. This is just really strong, period, because you're always using Cyclone Strike with this build to keep stuff grouped. So that's pretty much it for the builds. or for the gear rather, not for the entire build. We're using diamonds in our gear for the extra all resist, because that's all this build is focused around, is how much toughness you have, and then that translates into you being able to keep your party alive. So I'm using the amplification potion. I'm not entirely sure if that's a good choice with this build. I'm not really sure what else would be a better choice for this build actually, so I'm just kind of going with that. Went all over all the abilities. The Paragon, I have everything dumped into Vitality. You don't need max Spirit, and you don't really need movement speed, because if you chain your Dashing Strike and Cyclone Strike together, it actually gives you a ton of mobility, so movement speed becomes pretty irrelevant. So I just have everything dumped into Vitality. And then my offensive, defensive, and utility tiers are all full, which is why it's important to get to Paragon 800 at least before you start trying to push solo Greater Rifts. Because if you try to push before that, then you're basically trying to push Greater Rifts under a handicap, which makes it considerably more difficult. And then my passive skills, I'm using near-death experience. On receiving fatal damage, you instead restore 35% life and 35% spirit, and are immune to damage and control impairing effects for 2 seconds. This is just like an oh shit button basically, except you don't have an actual button, it just does it for you. Very rarely do I have this proc if I have a good party. Tonight's actually been a struggle and I haven't been able to get a good party, so this has been procking like all the time. Because I kept getting people that were just under geared for like 85 and 90 G rifts. So yeah, I've received the wrath of Ytar upon my brain, basically, with how many brain bleeds I've gotten tonight from people just not being geared or playing poorly or being drunk or whatever their excuse is. It wouldn't surprise me if it was the drunk part, because it is Saturday night after all, but the other thing I'm using is Resolve. Damage you deal reduces enemy damage by 20% for 4 seconds. Yet another debuff to enemies, which is it's again just really strong. I apologize. The more damage you can prevent your enemies from doing, the better. And that's a large portion of what this build is just keeping your enemies from really dealing any damage. Alacrity, I'm going to switch to Siege the Initiative. Dealing damage to enemies above 75% life increases your attack speed by 30% for 4 seconds. That was just really strong, because when I first Dashing Strike in and use Cyclone Strike, I just immediately get a burst of extra attack speed, and that can go indefinitely. If I'm just having enemies like randomly run at me, I can just Cyclone Strike them in and get that attack speed boost all over again, so it's pretty great, which synergizes with our Crippling Wave. And then I have Beacon of Ytar, which reduces all cooldowns by 20%. So that just makes it so I can use my abilities faster, basically. Because the more I can use my abilities, the more beneficial I am to the party in general. Because then I can pull stuff more, and I can like dashing strike and pull, or I can like dashing strike, pull, blind, which I do a lot when I engage a leader champion pack. So I'll dashing strike, cyclone strike, and then blind, and it works really well. And then I'll drop Inner Sanctuary too, because it reduces the damage I take. Well, for me and my party members, I should say. Oh, my weapons, I'm using purple gems, just life per hit gems. It just helps give me more recovery so that I don't have to worry about dying as much. And because this is a 0 DPS build, there isn't any reason to put anything else in my weapons anyway. And then finally we got Ice Blink. Your gold skills now apply chill effects, and your chill effects now slow enemy movement by an additional 25%. Enemies who chill have a 10% increased chance to be critically hit. This just synergizes really well with our crippling wave again, because you get that slow effect, and enemies are being crit more often, so they die faster. It's just some good debuffs from that gem, basically. And then we got Gogok of Swiftness, which increases attack speed, dodge, and cooldown. Pretty straightforward. Just attack speed helps with my crippling wave, dodge helps with my survivability, and the CDR helps with my survivability as well as helping me keep my party alive. So, and then we got the Gem of Efficacious Toxin. I think I said that right. Poison all enemies hit for 60 to 50%. Or 6,250% weapon damage over 10 seconds. And then all enemies you poison take 10% increased damage from all sources and deal 10% less damage. So this is not only a buff to your party, but you're also debuffing your enemies. So it's like it's a double whammy of goodness there. If someone should name it sandwich double whammy of goodness, because that's basically what this gem is. Let's see. So so yeah, that's pretty much about it, guys. I just wanted to give a more proper in-depth explanation of how this build actually functions. So, for those of you that are new, there's no pressure, of course, but it would be greatly appreciated if you could sub, like, or comment, or even share the video. That would be even better. And then, of course, my returning subscribers pretty much already know the drill at this point. But I do hope this video was informative for you guys and kind of helped explain how this build actually functions, with me actually being able to explain it properly rather than trying to do gameplay and explain how the build worked at the same time, because that didn't go very well at all. Because I noticed in the last video there was a lot of times where I just stopped talking entirely, and I wasn't doing it intentionally. I just didn't have a choice, because it was either try to explain my build while playing and let my party members die, or keep my party members alive. And then yeah, it's just it's way too chaotic. I kind of figured it would be an issue from the start. But after that video, yeah, I don't think I'm going to try doing any more build explanations while I'm doing gameplay at the same time, because that just it doesn't work unless you're a robot or something, and you got that quad core CPU in your head instead of brain noodles, then yeah, there won't be any issues there. But considering I am human, it was a struggle. But that's all for now for this video, guys. I will have a new video of actual gameplay out as soon as I can have it out. I probably won't commentate over it. I will most likely just put some royalty-free music in the video when I decide to do gameplay, rather than commentate over it, because I just did this video which explained the build, so I don't think it would be beneficial to explain things a second time. But yeah, hope everyone has a good weekend. And if I don't have my next video out before Monday, I hope everyone has a good work week, or at least a decent enough work week. And I will see you guys next time. Later.